just let me know.
We're good.
All right, at this time, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Please silence any cell phones or electronic devices that may make noise at this time. I will ask you all to stand for the invocation led by City Commissioner John Penny and continue standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Will you pray with me? Dear gracious God, we thank you for another day. We thank you for the cleansing rain that we need so much. We thank you for the veterans that sacrificed so much so that we could be here to meet freely. During this stressful time of this pandemic, we have business owners concerned about their finances, parents concerned about their children, and people just concerned about their health. Please place your healing hands so that they can feel a little less stress. Help us to get through this all together and help us to make wise decisions in your honor tonight. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Val, can you go ahead and call the roll, please?
Commissioner Penny,
Here.
Commissioner Curry,
Here.
Commissioner Danio,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Mayor Villa.
Here. All right, we're going to move to our first presentation, which is the fiscal year 2019 comprehensive annual financial report. So, Val, do we need to call in, or Joe, do you know if they're going to call in to us? We need to call them? Okay. Do you have? Okay.
Should be in your email. You do the pledge to Stella.
What is his name?
What's that?
Yeah, really.
Pledge to Stella.
Yeah.
I'll let you talk, or do you want me to do it?
Hello.
Hi, Tom. This is Stella. We're at the commission meeting. We have you on speakerphone.
Hi, Stella.
Hi there. And we'll.
Okay. I apologize. This is kind of a weird time, but if everyone can hear me, that'll be great.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Commission, employees, and public. Presenting the audited financial statements for the year ended September 30th, 19, and on page 2, I'll just say page 1, page 2. Page 2, the only thing I really want to say about this, and I'm going to make this presentation quick because I know you guys need to move on and get out of here and that kind of thing. But the certificate of achievement for 41 years, that's outstanding. And if we can keep that up, that will be absolutely fantastic. Just the overview of the CAFR, the introductory section, financial section, statistical section, and the supplemental audit attestation reports include the GAGAS report, management letter, and the independent accountant's report. And on page, let's see here, on page 5, it shows that we have a new thing called a new report called the affidavit for impact fee. And what that basically says is that, an affidavit has to be provided that, goes through their requirements and procedures to adopt an impact fee. And essentially that's what Stella has done by signing as a financial officer and signing that the impact fee is correct. let's see here, page 3. I mean, you've seen all this stuff before, so I'm not going to go through it. But the most important thing is the last section the last sentence where we say that, in our opinion, the financial statements are presented fairly at September 30th, 2019. Excuse me.
It's not showing up.
Excuse me? Page 3?
Yeah, it's not showing up on my PowerPoint.
Oh, it is not.
But we're okay. Go ahead, Tom.
And also, Tom,
Okay, I'm sorry, Valerie, because I do have that on there. Okay.
Tom.
Yes.
Hey there, this is Mayor Villa. Just for the record,
Yes,
could
sir.
you go ahead and please state your name and the company that you work for?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Thomas Ford. I am the audit principal at BMC CPAs in New Smyrna Beach.
Thank you, and you can continue on.
Okay. All right. On page 4, it just goes through more of the independent auditor's report, the required supplementary information that we need to report on. We do not give an opinion, but we apply limited to procedures just to make sure that all that required supplementary information is in accordance with the financial statements. So, and the statistical section, we don't give an opinion on that either. That's all done by the Stella and the financial crew. Okay, here. Page 5, again, I mentioned the affidavit impact fee. The Yellow Book report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters. Basically, what that report is saying, we did not find any problems with the Holly Hill internal control. Again, this year, Stella and Catherine did a fantastic job on the internal control, and we did not have any findings. And the attestation report on investments just goes through and says that basically we agree with, and Holly Hill is in accordance with, is in compliance with all the investment policies. If we go to page 6, that is what I want to talk about. I want to focus on 2 items in the net position components. The change in cash and investments of $2,862,000, and what that basically represents is, well, there was an increase this year of $1,480,000 in net income, as well as the investment portfolio changed. If you remember last year, the last 6 days of September in 2018, items were moved. They were moved from SunTrust to specific Wells Fargo accounts and CDs and so forth. This year, you've had a whole year to realize that good move. So the increase of $2,862,000 is very good. Receivables and other assets increased by $2,458,000. A lot of this has to do with additional FEMA, roughly $534,000. There was an interfund receivable, solid waste, loaned to the general government. And keep in mind, no proprietary fund led to the governmental fund, $1,320,000. They should have done that in the past, and Stella was right. John was right to do that for the current year, because basically the $1,320,000 is help the general government with the hurricane expenses for both Matthew and Irma. And please, Stella, correct me if I'm wrong there. And then we have a Sunrise Park grant of $237,000. So that is the significant difference of the receivables and other assets. The current liabilities we'll see because the general government is higher, or the accounts payable are higher, is because of most of that $1,320,000. Because again, we're increasing assets, but we're also increasing liabilities by that $1,320,000. Page 7 really goes through the pension and OPEB changes for the year, and that change totals down to a negative $615,000, which is really good because with all the pension plans that the city of Holly Hill has, to only decrease by $615,000 is pretty good, I believe. The deferred outflows, I just wanted to make a mention of this because the change in deferred outflows is $84,000 on page 7, yet on page 6 it's $49,000. That's because we do not include on page 7 the deferred charge on refunding. Okay, page 8. I would like to focus on a few things here. Program revenues increased by $5,799,000, of which most of that deals with either an increase in operating grants due to FEMA, as well as the state grant with regards to the median. The other thing is in charges for services of about $2,800,000, of which most of that deals with the general fund and the internal service fund charging for services. And you'll see contra to that is there's an increase in water and sewer utilities expense and stormwater and solid waste expense, mainly due to those charges that are charged from the general government to the proprietary. The only other really significant change I see in expenses is economic and physical environment, and that went up by $1,730,000, of which a good portion of that is for DOT for that median expense. Page 9 shows the per capita revenue on the governmental funds. As you see on here, charges for services went from $12 to $111, and that's basically due to charges for services for the additional fees that are charged from the government to the proprietary for charges that should have been being charged in the past. Their salary charges and so forth that are properly allocated or charged back to proprietary. Page 10 just shows you a pie chart of the governmental fund revenues. Page 11 shows you actually the same type of graph, but it's for total income of governmental fund revenue, and as you see, it really did jump in the current year, and most of that is due to what I've already talked about, the operating grants, as well as the charges for services. Page 12 The significant one, again, is economic environment, going from $37 up to $177. And most of that, again, is due to DOT, the median. Page 13 is the pie graph again. Page 14 is bar graphs with the governmental fund expenses. As you see, the expenses increased from the prior year. Page 15, we're not really that far off in our change in total change in net position as compared to the previous year. The total change in net position is $1,594,000, while in 2018 it was $1,638,000. I was looking at that, and a lot of the changes are in the fact that operating expenses increased over last year, but transfers out decreased. It was really nice this year in the fact that there was not a lot of transfers out from the government funds into the proprietary or vice versa. It made things a little more simpler this year, and my hat's off to Stella for doing that. Unassigned net assets, it didn't change that much in the current year from $99 last year to $100 this year. But let me tell you how I calculate that. We use the government funds only, and we take the unassigned equity, and we see how many days that will cover the total government, the general fund expenses. And in this case, in 2019, the unassigned equity was $2,228,493, while the general fund expenses, those expenses were, most of the expenses come out of the general fund, was $7,997,848. That's a percentage of 27.86, and times 365 days, that's 100 days. That's really pretty good. My last 3 slides, where it says 2019 levy. The 2019 levy, I just wanted to explain this. I'm sure you all know it, but the 2019 levy, the income, the revenue from that levy will not be realized until September 30th, 2020. But on page 17, I go through the years from 2019 to 2015, showing you what's Holly Hill's portion and what is the other portion. Other portions are the hospitals, St. John's River Management District, that type of thing. Page 18 shows comparable millage rates. And there's really been a decrease in the current year, all with the exception of all but New Smyrna Beach. They've gone down a little bit. Most of it, the Daytona Beach was represented most of the decrease. But as you see on the highlighted for Holly Hill, we will be at 6.25 for the 2019 levy. Okay, now the last slide. I received something last year from you, Miss Curry, that we wanted to. I believe you wanted just values and taxable values for a lot of those districts
That's correct.
that I had talked about in the previous year. I went through that, and I could bore you guys and go through all that, but maybe it would be more wiser or whatever if I sent Stella an Excel spreadsheet in the morning where it goes through the just values for South Daytona, Daytona Beach, Port Orange, Ormond Beach, and New Smyrna, and compares that to the taxable for those same cities. I know for Holly Hill, based on the 2019 levy, we'll realize a 6.6% increase in the just value from 912 to 964, and a taxable value of roughly 6% from 626 to 665. But I can do an Excel spreadsheet for you in the morning that would probably show these a little better. To show this on a graph would have muddled it up so much that no one, including myself, would have really been able to make heads or tails with it. But basically, that concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I'd be certainly willing to entertain them.
Yes, sir. First off, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, first off, Commissioner Curry said yes, she would appreciate that to be sent over tomorrow morning. And Vice Mayor John Penny had a question for you.
Okay.
Tom, back on page 12, you list
Yes.
the expenses per capita. Where do you get the data showing our population without a census every year?
I get that in the statistical, and I will give you the exact page of that. That is page 155.
And where's that from?
It's table 17 on the CAFA. It's page 155.
Okay, from our CAFR.
Yes, sir.
So do we supply that information?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Nope.
Mr. Forte, would you like to add anything? No? All right, thank you very much for joining us by telephone.
Thank you, sir.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you, Tom. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that was different.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, any member of the commission like to talk to Mr. Forte or a member of staff or make a comment on the CAFR report? All right, with that, we will move on. And now we will move to our public comments section. Let me remind everyone that if you do wish to speak, you have 5 minutes at the mic, and we will need your name and your address for the record. And we ask that you speak clearly into the microphone. And so is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the commission about anything not on our regular agenda tonight? All right. I see Peen's hand up in the back if you want to come up. Peen? Wait till you get up to the mic because we're going to be recording. Sure. So you have 5 minutes. Please state your name and your address.
Joseph Mendes, 1500 Ridge Avenue. I represent Circus Bar 2 in Holly Hill, 1700 Ridgewood Avenue. We've been there almost 20 years. We support a lot of things in town. We support a lot of funding in town, a lot of disabled stuff, women's shelters, battered women's shelters, the Humane Society, so on and so forth. We've been closed 68 days as of today. I've been paying my help 68 days as of today. We've been told a lot of stories about getting money back, getting the PPP fund. It's not really happening, and it's not happening the way it was told to us. So we're looking for your help and support to get to Governor DeSantis to help us get open again. We'd like to get back to work. My help would like to get back to work, and families would like to get some kind of normalcy back. I don't know if you guys can help us, but I'm here to see if you can. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank
I
you.
would appreciate any help that you guys can offer.
Thank you very much. In the back there, Sue? And please hold your applause, just so we could keep it all together here.
My name is Susan Wild. I live at 20 Oakwood Park, Ormond Beach, Florida. I have been employed at the Circus Bar 2 located at 1700 Ridgewood Avenue, City of Holly Hill, for approximately 20 years, employed by Joe Mendez, nicknamed Peen. In this time, our bar has been an extension of the Holly Hill community. On December 25th, 2016, the Circus Bar 2 was written up in the Daytona News Journal for our contributions to nonprofit organizations in the Holly Hill area. To list a few, for 13 years, we have worked with the AT&T Pioneers with Family Renewal, filling their food pantry to filling boxes of toys donated from our local customers. We have worked with Troy's Pub to donate bicycles and toys to the Holly Hill Police Department at Christmas. Art supplies for WORC from a box collection at Circus Bar 2. A basket raffle for the Halifax Humane Society for a new washing machine for our customer Keith, who volunteers his time there. Every year at school time, we work with our local teacher, Kendall Wharton, to fill the box of school supplies or healthy snacks for her classroom, whatever her needs are. We work with Janie Rock at Chris's Lounge to do bake sales for our local veterans, collecting jeans, shoes, whatever the need. Poker runs, all the local bars get involved for our community and raising money for medical needs, tornado victims, bills, and etc. I'm asking you to help the local bars to reopen. We can do this safely and get our families back to work. We are Holly Hills community, and I appreciate your help helping us.
Thank you very much, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And in respect of time, too, we know that there may be quite a few members wanting to say the same thing, and that's certainly fine. It's your right to come up and do that. But also, if we could maybe not repeat any made statements so far, that would be helpful to us as well. So, yes, ma'am. And just state your name and address for the record.
I'm Gina Rubino, 15 Spanish Waters Drive, Ormond Beach, Florida. My mother was Chris. We have Chris's Lounge. I own Chris's Lounge. Family owned and operated for over 30 years. I'm not going to say the same exact thing that Sue and Peen were going to say, but I just would love your support on this issue. We need to reopen our businesses immediately. This has been devastating for my family, my employees, and our bar family. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Gina.
Thank you.
Yes, Rudy.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rudy. I own and operate Rudy's Bar and Grill.
And Rudy, state your last name, too, for the record.
My name is Rudy Salmani,
Thank you.
and we have been partially open during the crisis. We're serving mainly food. I don't see a reason why the rest of the bars are closed. I believe they should be open. There was a protest on Saturday on the streets of Holly Hill, which people of Holly Hill wants their lives back, and we support that. Mainly, we do food, we do some liquor, we do some beer, we do a lot of benefit runs. We support the community to the maximum. We support the law enforcement to the maximum. And I believe that we should be allowed to continue doing what we're doing. So if anybody can relay the order, or they can relay the message to the governor of state of Florida, because I've realized that that it comes from higher authority, and that's what we're asking for. we're asking the message to be relayed to the governor of Florida so we get our lives back. At this time, I have 3 girls out of work. I got 2 girls working. I should have 5. And I realized that the rest of the restaurants and bars are having too many people unemployed, which will all have bills to pay. I thank you for your attention, and I think we're repeating the same thing over and over, but if Disney can be open with 5 to 10,000 people a day, our bars can be open with 20 and 30 people a day. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on the record? All right, seeing none, I will go ahead and close public comment. And I'm going to take this time right now, since obviously this is why most people are here tonight, to explain that we here as a city commission cannot open up the bars by any means, meaning that the governor's executive order is what governs the day here, and we have to follow it. And so our staff has done their job following the governor's order. This is in the hands of the governor. We can't choose to disobey it, state law or an executive order, just by choice of this commission. So want to make that clear first and foremost. I've talked to a couple of you throughout the weekend, and I have heard your concerns. I have heard from many, many people, from bar owners to patrons to your bartenders, a lot of people that are in a lot of pain. And I have always stood for limited government, get government out of the way, let competition actually compete out there. And the problem that I had with the executive order currently is the fact that we are essentially, government as a whole, choosing winners and losers. And that's where I had the problem with it. But I received a phone call from a pretty prominent veteran, a Marine, recently, and he explained to me how hard this and difficult this time has been for him. This man, he served his country honorably and suffers from PTSD, and he goes to a local bar almost every day, says most days he doesn't even drink alcohol, he'll drink soda. He'll be there for 3 or 4 hours with his family, with his friends, and a coping mechanism through socialization. When I heard that, and I heard how tough of a time and how bad his depression has gotten throughout this time, it actually affected me. It ticked me off that government is telling people, especially our veterans, that they cannot go and take personal responsibility and to do that. And meanwhile, we're not just saying everybody has to be shut down. That's one thing. But we're allowing restaurants to be open and actually serve people, serve patrons as if they were a bar. So that was where I was over the weekend, and I penned a letter, and so I gave each of you a copy of it tonight. And I want to read this into record, and I want to send this to the governor, to Governor Ron DeSantis, and I'm asking him to reopen the bars. The reason I'm reading it here tonight is I'm asking if this commission would support this letter, because the opening line says, "On behalf of the city of Holly Hill." Now, I understand, and I'm not going to twist anybody's arms up here. If anyone has a issue with any of this, then I can certainly just write it on behalf of myself as an elected official, but not on behalf of the city. So here's where it goes, and we'll have all of the niceties in there to the governor, but this is what the letter says.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
when you're reading it, you want us to stop you if you want us to add something or delete it, or do you want to read the whole
Good
thing
point.
and we chop it apart?
Actually, let's do that. So stop me right if there's a certain line in there that, and there are going to need some changes. This is the first draft. So it says, "On behalf of the city of Holly Hill and the greater business community, I write to you today to respectfully request that you allow for a pathway for bars to reopen here in the state of Florida."
Stop.
Yep.
And communicate it as soon as possible.
Okay.
People are unknown. You know, if you
Yes.
know, if they tell you you're going to open in 3 months, you can make a plan. If they tell you open in 3 days, you can make a plan.
Very true. Many of these establishments do good throughout our community by supporting events that raise money for law enforcement, purchase Christmas gifts for kids, and supporting several veterans organizations, initiatives, and individuals. These hardworking business owners and their employees are left suffering economically through these trying times, while others in the service industry are getting back to work. As I'm sure you have, I've received numerous calls and emails from business owners and patrons calling for the reopening of our local bars. One phone call I received was from a prominent Marine veteran who suffers from PTSD. He pled that we allow bars to reopen, as frequenting these establishments was his way of coping with his disorder through socialization. He explained that he doesn't have any family and his fellow patrons are like family to him. This is just one story from one city, but there are many similar stories across the state. Governor, you have done a wonderful job leading us through this pandemic, and now we need to allow hard-working business folk the opportunity to reopen and capture their idea of the American dream.
Stop.
Yep.
I think folk should be folks. It sounds a little hillbilly-ish. And then
Holly Hillbilly?
you read opportunity to reopen, but you don't have to written in your letter.
Perfect, thank you.
I think it should just say business owners and take folk out completely.
Well, I think he's addressing the people that work in the business.
Owner,
Right.
operators, employees.
Yeah.
All of them, right. Good thoughts there. I made those changes. The pathway for most businesses to reopen is clear, but as of now, bars are left out of this, and I say calculation, but I want it to be equation. Are left out of this equation. Just left out?
It's not an equation, it's not a calculation, they're just left out.
But as of now, bars are left out. With restaurants being able to reopen at 50% capacity and serve alcohol to customers, there is an unfair advantage being created and condoned by government. Essentially, by allowing restaurants the ability to serve guests in this way, but disallowing bars to operate whatsoever, government is choosing winners and losers. Let me be clear, I am not advocating for the closure of any restaurants. However, I am asking for the fairness of allowing bars to operate in order to compete, to keep serving their patrons, pay their employees, and serve many hardworking people. My request is that you allow bars to open with the same guidelines that restaurants must follow.
Stop.
Yep.
The last sentence where you say, my request is to allow bars with the same. His plan might be to open bars more generously than restaurants. We don't know. So I would just ask him, my request is that you communicate your plan for bars to reopen as soon as possible. You don't want to hurt them if he's going to say bars open next Tuesday, full blast.
Right.
And restaurants are still at 50%.
That's true. That's true. That's a good thought. Can you say that one more time? Did you write that down?
Yeah, my request is that you communicate your plan for bars to reopen as soon as possible.
Your plan for bars to reopen as soon as possible?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to pick your letter apart.
No, that's great.
It's because he gets off the news bureau.
I thank you for taking this into consideration, and I'm here to listen and discuss this topic with you at any time if needed. We thank you for your continued energy and leadership to help Florida navigate its way back to great success. So, thank you, John, for a lot of those added bonuses there. So, I don't know how I want to do this. I don't want to take a vote for approval of this, but if there's
a consensus.
Yeah, if there's a consensus that you would support this, and this isn't about whether or not we're not having the debate of whether liquor and bars are this or that. It's a matter of fairness, that the government, that our officers, our city manager have to go out and enforce. And I believe that it's wrong. I believe it's unfair. So do I have the support to use the
I'm not opposed.
the city? Thank you, John.
And I'm not opposed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Well, we'll do that, and I'll get it cleaned up. Mr. Simpson, since we've talked about this, I'm going to clean it up a little bit, make sure it's all grammatically perfect. Can I send it out to the commission beforehand, or how does that happen?
Probably the best thing to do is just clean it up and you send it out and copy them. But
Okay.
as long as you keep the spirit and intent of what you wrote here with the changes discussed,
Okay.
I don't think I would try to informally get them to reapprove it again.
Okay. All right.
And Mr. Mayor, I
Yep.
think time being of the essence, it might be in your best interest to email it first and then
Yeah.
follow it up with a paper copy.
Yeah, I have a contact in his office that I can get it to immediately, and then we'll do a public copy of it too. All right, well, thank you very much. So with that, I know a lot of you were here directly for that. That is what your city commission here in Holly Hill is doing. And if you'd like to leave at this time to not listen to the rest of the meeting, you are more than welcome to, or you're welcome to stay. So we'll give you a minute for anybody who wants to hit the road.
Thank you.
Thank you. What, you think people don't want to stay?
They never do. All right. Thank you to our officer as well, Bianelli. Bianelli.
He didn't hear you.
No, that's all right. All right, moving down to the consent agenda, items 1 through 2. The action proposed is stated for each item on the consent agenda. Unless a city commissioner removes an item from the consent agenda, no discussion on individual items will occur, and a single motion will approve all items. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on any item on the consent agenda tonight? Seeing none, I'll close public participation and entertain a motion for approval.
Second.
We have a motion made by Vice Mayor Penny and a second by Commissioner Curry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. There's nothing on our regular agenda, so we'll go down to our public hearings. Ordinance 2020-0-3026. Mr. Simpson.
Ordinance number 2020-0-3026 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Holly Hill, Florida, amending the land development regulations by amending the official zoning map to designate the property described in Exhibit A from R3 Medium Density Single Family Residential to CC1 Commercial Corridor District, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for suburban, providing an effective date.
Thank you. Mr. Walker?
Hi.
Thank you.
Mayor, Commissioner. There have been no changes to this item since first hearing. The applicant is requesting a rezone to R3, which is medium-density, single-family residential, to CC1 Commercial Corridor District. This is for approximately .34 acres that's located on the southeast corner of Garden Avenue and Eleanor Street. The R3 zoning district, as you know, is basically a single-family home residential district. CC1 is a commercial district. The applicant is requesting the rezone in order to utilize the subject property for light industrial uses. They have a sign company and they'd like to be able to continue to use that property for that. The zoning and future land uses surrounding the subject property are in your staff report. There's also a site analysis in your staff report, which gives more details about the property. With regard to consistency with the Land Development Code, the requested CC1 zoning district is consistent with the Land Development Code. It's also consistent with the comprehensive plan. So based on this, staff recommends that the City Commission adopt the ordinance enacting a rezone from R3, which is medium-density, single-family residential, to CC1, Commercial Corridor District, for property totaling .344 acres, located on the southeast corner of Garden Avenue and Eleanor Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Is there any questions for staff? Thank you, Mr. Walker. At this time, we will open this up to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this item to the commission tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. I will accept a motion for approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion needed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now moving to special exception number 2. Mr. Walker? Mr. Forte, would you like to say anything about it?
Just go ahead and introduce the item.
Okay.
This is a special exception request for the UBIC Church at 560 Floman Street. The property consists of 4 contiguous parcels. These parcels are labeled as A through D on an exhibit that's been included in your staff report, Exhibit A. Parcels A and B contain structures that are used for religious purposes, while C and D are vacant and they are used for parking. The entire church property is zoned R2, which is low-medium density single-family residential, and it has a low-density residential future land use designation. The R2 zoning does allow churches when they're approved by a special exception, and this property never did receive a special exception to operate as a church because the use actually predates the city's requirement for a special exception. So the current use and the structures are considered what we call legal nonconforming. But Section 114-34 of our land development regulations don't allow you to have a legal nonconforming use and then expand upon that use. So the applicant is asking for the special exception at this point because they're proposing a 10,000 plus square foot multi-purpose building to be built on the site. And so in order to expand on this site, they now need a special exception. There are 4 residential homes on the east side of Center Avenue between Kansas Street and Flomich. They are shown on Exhibit B of your staff report. And 2 of those homes are actually owned by the church. The code does have specific setback and screening requirements for approving a special exception for church structures when those abut residential homes. The applicant did petition for, and they did receive waivers for the setback and screening requirements from the Board of Planning and Appeals, but because the screening and setback requirements up against the residential homes are also requirements for this commission to grant a special exception, the BOPA's approval has to be agreed upon by this commission. And I'll present a little bit more information on that in a minute. In order to approve the church use at the subject location, the City Commission has to find that the site and the applicant meet the requirements of Section 114-666. These requirements are listed in your staff report. It's staff's opinion that the applicant meets criteria 1 through 4. But because the church already existed, it does not clearly meet the criteria 5 and 6. With regard to criteria 5, it says where the property abuts, which in this case means to share a common property line, residentially zoned or residentially developed properties, the minimum building setback shall be 75 feet, and the minimum setback for parking areas and access drives shall be 50 feet. In all other cases, the minimum building setback shall be 25 feet, and the minimum setback for parking areas and access drives shall be 10 feet. Well, the structures on the developed parcels, which again are A and B on Exhibit A, they don't meet the setback requirements. In order for them to be able to meet those setback requirements, we'd have to remove parts of the building. So the applicant's requesting that the setback requirements for the existing structures and parking be waived, and that they be allowed, obviously, to remain in their current location where they've been since at least the mid-1970s. The 2 vacant parcels on Decatur Avenue, which are C and D on Exhibit A, are currently used as parking areas. So the applicant's requesting that the setback requirements for current parking and any future development abutting the rear property lines of the residential homes be reduced to 10 feet. Only one of those parcels, which is parcel D on Exhibit A, abuts residential homes not already owned by the applicant. With regard to criteria 6, it says landscape buffer area shall be provided along the entire length of and contiguous to every property line in accordance with Chapter 98, Article 3. That chapter and article deals with buffers and incompatible uses. In this case, that would be churches or church activities against residential homes. And it requires, or it's comprised of 3 parts. setback buffer, and visual screen. And there's a chart in your staff report that shows how that relationship works. And one of the examples that I give in the staff report is if you have a building and you were to place it on parcel D of Exhibit A, it would be required to be at least 35 feet from the rear property line. It would be required to have a 10-foot buffer and a type A visual screen, which in this case would be a 6-foot masonry wall and a tree every 25 feet. So on May 4th of this year, the applicant petitioned the Board of Planning and Appeals to waive the visual screen requirement and to reduce that setback from 35 feet to 10 feet for parking and any future structures that abut the residential property. The BOPOD did approve that waiver, but that was contingent, again, upon this commission's approval of the special exception and your willingness to ratify their approval of the waiver request. So, to summarize, the special exception will allow the 4 properties to be used for church use in a residential zoning district. The waivers will allow the current parking and structures at 560 Flomich and 1620 Decatur, which are A and B on Exhibit A, to remain in place with the current setbacks. It will allow current and future parking and future development on the northwest property lines, which would be parcels C and D, basically, as shown on the exhibit, to occur with a 10-foot setback against the residential homes and no visual screen requirement. What it won't allow is the applicant to build additional structures at this time other than the 10,000 square foot plus multi-purpose building that they're now requesting. That's because with a special exception, anytime you have a special exception that comes before the commission, the applicant has to show on a site plan what they're proposing. So at this point, the only building that we have that's been submitted by way of site plan, and that's included in your packet, is the 10,000 square foot plus multi-purpose building. If they propose buildings on C or D up against the homes, it will have to come back to this commission.
Brian,
So-
if the commission approves the special exception, then it's applied to the property. So what are they coming back for with the building? What's the purpose of that?
Because any structures have to be shown on a site plan.
So it's for a site plan approval? But it's not for a special exception at that time, it'll be for site plan approval?
No, it would be for a special exception.
So then we're not applying a special exception to this, or we are, and then they have to come back and get another one?
They would have to come back and get another one. Yeah. So with that in mind, staff recommends approval of the requested special exception in order to expand the existing church use. If the commission decides to approve the requested waivers, staff recommends that the following be imposed. That the applicant maintain any landscaped areas by replacing vegetation that dies or is destroyed or damaged, whether this be by accident or by natural disaster. That no activity or structures be permitted within the 10-foot rear setback for the church properties abutting the residential homes on the northwest property line as shown in Exhibit C. That a 6-foot solid fence be provided along the entire northwest property line as shown in Exhibit C. And that future development on church property abutting the residential homes be no more than 1 story or a single story in height and low intensity in nature, generating little noise and activity. And that the decision as to whether or not development is low intensity or not shall be determined solely by the city. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much for that detailed rundown. I'm sure there's some questions. Are there any questions? Yeah, Vice Mayor Penny.
Brian, I know you've been talking with the applicant, going back and forth for months about this. Your recommendations, is the applicant in agreement with your recommendations?
I've spoken and stayed in touch with their consultant, and so yes.
Okay. There's been this COVID thing. I haven't been by UBIC in probably 2.5 months, so. Normally I would have ex parte communication and have to disclose it, but at this time I do not. So,
I have not spoken directly with the applicant, but their consultant.
Any other questions, Vice Mayor? Are there any other questions from the commission? No? Okay. Thank you very much. At this time, I will give the applicant the opportunity to come up and address anything that you feel maybe was left out or you would like to add. State your name and address for the record, please.
Name's John Zemball, 150 South Palmetto Avenue, Daytona Beach, Florida, Suite 201. Here representing UBIC for Zahn Engineering. And I'd like to thank Brian for his report and thank you, Mayor, for being here along with the commission. And I'm here for questions if you got them. Otherwise, I think you did a great job on the report.
Vice Mayor had a question that was your applicant in agreement with all of the recommendations that staff laid out?
Sure, we're amicable to the conditions.
Okay. Is that a? Okay. Is there any other questions for the applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, I will open this up to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to talk to the commission on this? Yes, sir. I would just ask that you state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Tina Kirk, and I live at 1659 Center Avenue. And I brought Todd along with me because he understands things better than me, and I've told him how I feel, so I'm going to let him talk for me.
Okay. Just state your name for the record as well.
My name is Todd Westervelt. I'm not sure I understand everything that's been proposed, and that's part of the concern that we have.
Okay.
That as a good neighbor, that we haven't been consulted. But I would ask for consideration for opposition to this exception until, at least until some concerns are addressed that we have with regard to activity that has been happening for the last 6, 8 to 10 years, which I'm not sure falls under, the time frame that Brian talked about with regard to exemption to a 10,000 square foot structure abutting her property. And so the nature or the code, I think, for Holly Hill goes to how does a church affect the nature of the neighborhood? How does it change it? How does it influence it? How does it affect the quality of life, the property values? We know that property values vary according to what the activity of the church, the structures are, but we're also talking about a quality of life. So we have some concerns that currently haven't been addressed, and we had no idea about how to go about addressing them about current activity. For example, the parking lot, we don't know if it was surveyed or not, but the parking lot has been built with, it was built so that it leaks water when it rains into Tina's backyard. So she has a 1 to 2 foot swamp for several weeks every time there's a significant rain. And I can go on, but there are many significant issues that impact not only the value of her property, but also the quality of her life, which goes to the Holly Hill Code. How does the church affect the nature of the neighborhood? So I think we would stand in opposition at this point until that's addressed satisfactorily. Not just the condition of, having the property exception and then getting another exception to the building, but also, as I understand that, correct?
The waivers don't have to do with the current building. Just
right.
It is confusing. There's two different.
I think I have it, but it's a two-part process, is what you're saying, which I think it should have been a one-part process, because, eventually it's going to be coming. She received a notice that there was going to be a multi-purpose building, not necessarily an exception. What's the exception for if it's not for a building? So, that's got to be addressed. otherwise we oppose for significant reasons. And we just cited one, and that was the drainage issue. And, you know, if you're talking about something, just to add one other thing, talking about a wall or a fence, she's had a fence, which she had to ask for the fence to be built when the parking lot went up. It's been broken since last October. So I'm not sure if we want a brick wall. You know, I can understand evergreen trees. I know that the code asks for every 30 inches, that there's a 30-inch brush, and that has to grow to a certain height within a year. So I'm not exactly familiar with all of the specifics that are in the code. I only glanced at them very quickly. But the underlying nature and intent, and that goes to the quality of life and the value of her property is significant. And I think it should be addressed before anything like this is voted on or accepted.
All right, thank you very.
I hope that's a reasonable request. And I would ask one other thing too. I don't know, she has her house in Holly Hill. I own a house in Palm Coast. We're together, but we're also apart. If I was going to my township council, I would, on an issue of this importance to me, because it does affect the nature of the not just her property, but of the neighborhood. And I'll give one more example. I'm sorry, but
I'll let you finish your thought there if there's no
Yeah,
objection.
just very quickly. You know, we're very supportive of the church. They do great things. Their food bank is a wonderful thing for needy people. But, you know, we've had to invest in a security system quite significant, not just for monitoring, and I won't get into the other details because, you know, a security system is secure because not all the details are known about it. But we have transient people, homeless people who have stayed out in the parking lot, who stalk the house, and I think that she has a right to be concerned about things like that. So if I was approaching my city of Palm Coast, I would ask humbly and with respect. I don't know the nature of the relationships between anybody on the council or anybody that's involved with the city with regard to the leadership or the families of leadership that surround the church. But I would ask that if there is some type of relationship between some person on this council or in the government that has influence over the impact of this decision, that they either reveal or recuse themselves so that we can have a vote that is impartial.
All right, thank you, sir. We appreciate it, and thank you, ma'am. All right, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to this item tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Mr. Simpson, it was brought up if there's any relationship to any of the members of the church or whatnot for a recusal. We can't recuse ourselves, but is there any, you know, I think we all know UBIC.
If it was a voting conflict of interest, as defined by state law, you would have to recuse yourself, which means that you or a family member, a business associate, has some type of a pecuniary gain from a vote. Otherwise, the law requires that you have to.
Which I don't believe anybody does, but if you do, speak up.
And then if anybody had any ex parte communications
Right.
With the applicant or anybody outside this meeting regarding this, as John mentioned, those ex parte communications will be disclosed.
So at this time, was there any ex parte communication? No.
Well, not since this has come up, but this has been a dream, I think, of church leadership for years. So yes, I've discussed it, and I think everyone on this council has been positively impacted by the organization, and I know thousands of our citizens in the city of Holly Hill and thousands of citizens of Volusia County and even in Port Orange have been positively impacted by this organization. So, however, that being said, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Simpson, this body needs to make its decision in a quasi-judicial manner based on the evidence that's been presented to us tonight. And there has to be substantial, competent evidence for us to sway our decision one way or another. So if someone says that property values may be affected one way or another, unless they are an expert in that situation, we don't consider that in our decision this evening.
You're exactly right, Mr. Vice Mayor. You can't, thank you. Did you have something?
I would just personally like to say, I kind of get the feel of the tone. I know the McEwens, and I've known them for many years. I had a child that we were trying to adopt that went there. They're a fine family. It's not that I have any personal, we don't barbecue together, but yes, I do know them as well as I know many other business owners, citizens. I mean, of course I know them.
Yeah. And we all know them, yeah.
Well, he was asking about our relationships.
Right.
So instead of having that hanging up over here, I want to clear that up. I don't vote that way, first of all. I vote for what's best for the city of Holly Hill as a whole, and also by what my attorney tells me that I'm allowed to hear and base my vote upon. So I just wanted to clear the air on that.
Right, and if there's no other ex parte communication that's taken place, I would just say that the Vice Mayor is correct. We have to work in a quasi-judicial manner. We have facts, and we cannot base those on opinions, but only the facts presented in front of us tonight on this public hearing. So with that, are there any questions for staff at this time, Vice Mayor?
Mr. Walker, what type of public notice was given to the surrounding neighbors concerning this matter?
A notice is required to go out to all of those who are within a 300-foot radius of the building at least 10 days prior, and that was done. And also a placard goes up, and we put a placard on each corner, and that has to be done at least 10 days in advance.
Did you receive any responses negatively or positively concerning this matter?
No, the only, nothing negative. I did get a call from one of the neighbors that butts up against the parcel D on Decatur, which is the parcel at the end of Decatur. The individual who lives at the last house did call and just had some questions. Initially, they thought that it was a request to buy their home, so I clarified that with them, and they did say that they would be here tonight, but haven't received anything negative at all.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Walker, did these concerns come before the Board of Planning Appeals when they heard this, or is this the first time?
This is the first time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Was this heard this way for the Board of Planning Appeals, or that was separate?
What was heard for the Board of Planning and Appeals was the waivers, waivers only, not the special exception.
Okay.
The BOPA was informed that this would come before the commission, city commission, for a special exception, and that an aspect of it, that being the waiver for the screen and setback against the residential homes only, that would have to be reheard in essence by this board.
Okay.
And just so that you understand, and I'm not sure if the gentleman who spoke was clear in what he was saying, the building, the proposed building that you see on the site plan is actually on the corner closest to Flomish. The parcels that the residential properties are to the left, in the bottom left corner. You can't hardly see it on the big screen, but you can see it on this screen where their homes are. And it's just to the east of that where although there is no proposed building now, in the future, I suspect that they'll come back with a proposed building, and that's the one that will have the direct impact to your rear yards that you're referencing. So this building being proposed tonight is on the corner of Flomish. I'm not trying to reduce what you said. I just want to make sure everybody understands the location of the building that's being proposed tonight.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. All right. Are there any other questions from this commission for staff? No? All right. I'll open up the floor for.
How do you want the motion? Do you want one motion for both, or do you want two separate motions? One for
Scott, can we do one motion for both, or should we separate it?
Do you want just approve the special exception with the waivers approved by the planning board?
Okay, we can do it in one.
If someone wants to make the motion approving the special exception as proposed with the waivers as approved by the planning board incorporated therein.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion needed?
I've already said what I need to say.
Any discussion? All right. Well, then we'll take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
And just so it's clear in the record, the motion was to incorporate all of the staff's
Recommend.
the approval of special exception along with the approval of the.
Right, the entire list that was in the packet, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. All right, now we'll move down to communications. So, Mr. Forte, what do you have for us tonight?
Just, there's really not much of an update with regard to the city's reopening effective June 1. As we get through the rest of this week, tomorrow there's a conference call, and I'll send out an email, a citywide email explaining what the modifications are or what the adjustments are that we're going to do as we open the doors up for the public to come next Monday. So that's moving along. I don't suspect that there'll be much of a problem. I'm hoping that more people will get used to the distance opportunities that they had with getting their permits and turning on their water via the internet. That's worked out very well, and I'd like to see if that will stay, as a good alternative to people. And that's it, unless anybody has any questions.
How's the grant applications coming, Joe?
The grant applications, there are a number. I've probably approved over 100 grants at $3,000 each, which is putting $300,000 back into the city of Holly Hills economy. I probably denied maybe about a dozen, maybe less than a dozen that were denied, and some are still coming in. So apparently, I guess if they're coming in, there's still funds available. So it's been quite a task without having an economic development person here to verify and go through them. Fortunately, my years of experience in the city, I know if a parcel is already commercially zoned, I don't have to go back and reference that. I know how many people generally are working at certain businesses, so in my position, it's a little bit easier than someone who's a one-year economic development employee in a new city. So it's working out fine.
I was just hoping the businesses that were here earlier had applied.
I know
They ran out of money.
Most of
I know one of them certainly did apply.
Yeah.
Nonprofit.
Pete told me that
You're not a
his
nonprofit.
account told him they ran out of money.
You should apply.
For the county?
That's what he told me.
They what?
Pete came in for lunch, said that his account told him that they ran out of money.
No, they didn't.
I have been,
No,
They were still accepting today.
Yeah, they still had money.
I have not been informed that they've run out of money.
Yeah, he might have been talking about something else, maybe a different grant. All right, thank you, Joe. Unless there's any other questions for Joe. All right, Mr. Simpson. All right. So I too wanted to bring up the grants because I wanted to applaud Mr. Forte on this once again because he, as you probably all know, really took a hold of this. He's dropping many other tasks that are extremely important throughout the day to make sure that he can get in as many people as we possibly can to the county for them to be able to receive this $3,000 grant, which honestly for a lot of businesses may be the golden ticket of whether they close or they get to stay open and try to make a go at this when we're all said and done. So I just really wanted to take a second. We give you a lot of accolades, but I wanted to just publicly thank you, Mr. Forte, by taking all the time, energy. He's also, what he didn't say is he's also calling people that don't have all the information in, and he's asking them for hey, look, you could still apply for this and making it work. So as he said, over 100 people, if the county so approves them, which there's no reason they shouldn't, that's over $300,000 put right into our community, which is going to go to employees and to the business owners that many of them live here. So thank you so much on behalf of the commission. We just really want to thank you for doing that. I want to thank this commission tonight for listening to me and standing behind me on the letter. I appreciate it. We are standing up for liberty, and I know that sounds cliche, but I really feel that way. So I want to thank you. In regards to the bars and whatnot, there was a protest over the weekend on Saturday at Chris's Lounge with many people that were outside. Ms. Forte and I have talked about it. The chief, I think we were all a week ago CC'd. I think Mr. Forte sent it to all of us that this may be happening, although at that time Holly Hill wasn't a named location for it. So we got an email this morning that the protest did happen over the weekend, and that happened. So moving forward, I've talked to Mr. Forte about it, and any protests that happen in our city or big events, I don't want to necessarily have to clarify exactly what is a big event or not, but I think the chief and the city manager know which ones that we would need to know about. I think that all of us should be informed as fast as possible when it's happening or if we know before it's happening. And so I just want to talk about that. I had that conversation with Mr. Forte today. So I just wanted to put that on record. Moving down, Vice Mayor Penny and I we did the ribbon cutting today, and I wanted to explain why that happened with the Vice Mayor today. The Chamber is doing a reopen our businesses here, and so I requested that and can only limit it to a few people at a time. So unfortunately, the whole commission can't be there at these reopenings. So I requested that whoever's district it's in, that district commissioner gets to come out and be there with the business. But then we got the list back, and
They're all in my district.
they're all in his district.
I have one.
Yeah, everyone has one. Roy, you don't have any, unfortunately. So, and they're working to get other businesses on there. But it's an open thing, and
You can take a couple of mine if you want to.
if there's any way that we could do that at all, pass around the love. What's that, John?
Oh, I'll say.
Yeah, it was
No,
it was Fast Signs.
Fast Signs.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry,
Fast
Signs. Yeah, and so it's on Facebook, but you don't have Facebook, so it was a big Facebook Live event
Is
that they
on a
did.
computer or something?
Yeah, it's like on one of those
Hey,
you
you
know,
need to step up to
those
current
dial-up
day.
things. So I just wanted it to.
You don't know how to turn on a computer either. What are you talking about?
I just wanted to bring that up,
He's not
and
even
it
listening.
went really well. It went really well today, and I look forward to doing that more. Once again, that's the new chamber president, Sammy, that kind of thought of that and it's really kind of taken us into the new world of digital world, whatever you want to call it. I also wanted to mention that I've seen a couple dummy cars around town, and maybe I shouldn't say that so loud, but so people don't know. But I think it's great though, because
They're
I know.
unmanned police vehicles. They're not dummy
They're
cars.
ghost
Oh,
cars.
okay. Is that the official name?
Ghost car.
Ghost cars.
Ghost cars. Okay, ghost cars. So yeah, we don't have any
Yeah, but you
dummies.
never know.
So,
I thought you were talking
but
about him.
I just think it's great because we all get our probably number one complaint is speeding. I mean, it's right up there. So that's great because I think a lot of people are seeing them and slamming on that brake. So that's good. And lastly, wanted to bring up, as we probably all will, the commission was able to tour pickleball today, Pictona at Holly Hill, and I'll tell you, it's wow coming together. It was surreal. What an amazing facility! What an amazing opportunity for the city of Holly Hill. I think it's really going to put us on the map, and that brings me to my main point. There is a lot of misconception and misinformation out there, or lack of information by a lot of citizens and people outside the area that don't understand what it is and believe that we took away a youth baseball program, which, as we know, wasn't in existence for over a decade. We couldn't even revive it, unfortunately. And as we all know, that park was just absolutely decaying. Absolutely.
We did try to revive it.
We did try to revive it, and unfortunately, there's just not enough kids to even field a team anymore that want to play. Right, with the video game. So I wanted to bring that up because over and over there's posts or there's emails or there's calls about, what are you guys doing? You're spending millions and millions of dollars building something for a sport that I've never even heard of. Every single time that I have then talked to them about what the project is and how much money was actually donated to the city to do this, every single time they have switched their opinion on it. And so what that tells me is we're not getting the word out efficiently enough. We have done our best to do that, and it can only go so far because we're government. We're not going to advertise ourselves. But I talked to Mr. Forte, and just very quickly today, we had an idea of possibly making educational video of what it was, now what it is coming to be, and explaining that to people. And I think it'll catch steam on its own out there. I think a lot of people will share it. It'll be we won't have to pay to get that information out. But that's what I've noticed over and over is the lack of information on it. And it's unfortunate because it's a really, 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 really great community project that I know that all of us up here are proud of, and we need to make it work, and that community support is always so important. So I'll leave it at that, and we will move on to Commissioner Curry.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to everybody that came out and is still here. Thank you to everybody that came out and left. I was pleased that we're moving in a direction to try and help out some of the business community because it is kind of unfair. You have a restaurant, you can open 50% and sell alcohol. Why shouldn't they be allowed to open? So I'm glad that we're taking those measures. I just don't have any words for the Pictona facility. It was amazing, and I can't wait to see it when it's complete and people are out there playing, because it is such an awesome facility right now, state of the art. I'm really pleased with what's been done across the street. And I think the citizens are going to benefit from it because there's much more there, as we found out today, than pickleball. So I think the citizens will be able to utilize that facility in many different ways as well. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Vanio?
I was gonna say bocce?
Bocce ball.
When's the last time you played bocce ball?
I've never played bocce.
That's great. That's Italian, baby. McEwen's finally gonna get that building, huh? I want to be there when the first nail goes in, baby. I'm glad everything worked out. What's that?
Write a check.
Write a check. Yeah, okay, yeah. I'll bring a pizza or two.
Yeah.
I have nothing to say. I'm just glad everything worked out.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Johnson?
I just think things are moving ahead and getting better. I remember a couple of months ago how much of a scare we had, and look at it now. You see traffic back on the road, you see people out working more, and I hope it'll keep on going. But it's really, you can't blame the governor, you can't blame the president or anything, because they have a hard decision to make right now by weighing what's the best to stay out of it or come back into it, or how much it's going to affect you if you don't come back into it. So it's a hard thing to decide on things. Just like when you're up here, something you got to hard decide. You just got to cut them some slack and say, well, it's a job to do, and they have to do it. You know what I mean? So I'm sure that the governor has some reason behind maybe some things that we don't know about. So all we can do is present things to him and see what he says about it. You know what I mean? And I hope it's not a conflict of interest, but I have another commissioner here that's going to cater to my grandson's birthday party. But it wasn't my decision to pick him for the order. I'm only the one that has to pay the bill.
You don't get any decisions. You just have
I didn't
to
make the decision to pick him for the.
Just leave me a blank check. I'll take care of it.
He's not giving you no discounts.
Hope it's not a conflict of interest. His birthday's coming up this next weekend, and little Dallas will be 10 years old.
Wow. Double digits.
Getting wide open back into baseball. You better get your kid ready.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
It's coming.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Do you need an opinion from Mr. Simpson on if it's a conflict? I don't believe it is.
There's no exchange cash up here.
Yeah. There you go. All right, thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Vice Mayor Penny.
Just ditto on pickleball. My brain works in mysterious ways sometimes, but Miss Heller used to come up and say, the future fine city of Holly Hill. And when we toured the facility across the street, Reiner said this isn't the largest facility in the country, but it's the finest facility in the country. And that really stuck with me. And so maybe when pickleball opens, you'll come up and say, the fine city of Holly Hill.
There we go.
Thank you. The video, I think, is a great idea. When we had Nick here, he was going around doing some interviews, and that's kind of how I envision it. Maybe you get Julian Reiner and you facilitate it or Joe facilitates it or something, but get that information out. I think it's good, and it would make some positive changes. And lastly, just thanks to UBIC, and raise your hand if your last name is McEwen. Watch out, folks. The ants can take over the grasshoppers. There's more of them than us. But just the positive impacts that that organization has made in my life, in many people's lives in this community, is second to none. And I just appreciate the work. They got the government out of their way now. We're going to issue building permits and everything soon. Then the hard part comes, the fundraising. But I'm sure Pastor Chuck says when God shows up, he shows off. And if it's meant to be, it'll meant to be. And I hope in the next 12 months, we watching basketball games in there somehow. So thank you for reinvesting in our city.
All right. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Is there any further business?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Am I allowed to comment on pickleball?
No, you're not. But you know what? If there is no,
You can yell it out.
You would like to do it on the microphone, is what you're saying?
If I need to.
Into record? If there's no objection, you have 2 minutes, though, not 5.
Matt McEwen, 1604 Center Avenue. I just want to say I'm super excited about pickleball. The people of my father's generation, the baby boomers, we're going to have a huge amount of retirees, and they're going to look for activities that are low-impact sports. I'm super excited about it. The only reason I wanted to address it is you probably already have someone to do it, but if you wanted someone to donate their time so it wouldn't cost the city anything, I do a little bit of video production now. So if you want me to help film that, I'm totally willing to do that.
How about a pickleball jingle?
I could do that, and I will say this. I have written jingles for other cities that will remain unnamed. And they did pay me for that, but I would do it for my city for free.
What a nice guy.
I used to do something like that, too.
Yes, I think the mayor's voice on a jingle would be really good. I might actually get some publicity for it.
Coming out of retirement, maybe.
Former pop star and current mayor. That would be great. Thank you. That's all I
There we go. Thank you, Matt. With that, we are adjourned.
I thought you were a radio DJ at some. 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 You were a radio DJ at some.